You know, for so many of us, meditation means one thing: sitting down, getting quiet, and just watching our thoughts drift by, right? It's the cornerstone of modern mindfulness. But what if I told you that very practice, the one we're all taught, might not just be a little ineffective, but actually genuinely harmful? Well, today we're digging into a source that makes that exact claim, and it's a real mind bender.
Wow. I mean, that's a pretty intense way to kick things off, isn't it? The source material really doesn't pull any punches. It argues that this common way of meditating, just watching your thoughts, is a massive mistake. So let's get into the logic behind such a bold and honestly controversial statement.
All right, let's jump right into the heart of this warning. The core idea here is that passively observing your thoughts isn't leading you to some peaceful Zen state. Nope, it's actually a trap, one that could be making those exact mental patterns you're trying to escape even deeper.
So here's how the source frames it, and this is pretty wild. It says that when you're in that relaxed meditative state, your mind is super suggestible. So by putting all your focus on the random, chaotic thoughts popping into your head, you're basically hypnotizing yourself with your own mental junk mail. You're letting it sink right into your subconscious.
To really drive this home, the source uses this great metaphor. Picture this. You're trying to be present, to just be aware of yourself. Now imagine a single, tiny feather floats in front of your face. Just focusing on that little feather is enough to pull your attention away from your core self. So if something that small can do it, what do you think happens when you turn your attention to the non-stop, raging hurricane of your thoughts? The argument is simple. You get totally and completely lost.
So, how does this damage actually happen? This is where it gets really interesting, because the source moves away from just a philosophical claim and presents this as a logical, almost scientific analysis of a process happening inside your brain.
They even have a name for it: soft self-hypnosis. The idea is that the alpha brainwave state, which is super common during meditation, is like an open doorway to your subconscious. And when your attention is fixed on a thought, that thought just waltzes right past your conscious mind's security guard and plants itself deep inside. And this creates what the source calls a seriously damaging negative feedback loop. Here's how it's supposed to work. Step 1, your attention leaves your inner sense of being, yourself, and latches onto some random thought. Step 2, because you're in that chill, receptive alpha state, the subconscious gate is wide open. And step 3, that thought gets received and reinforced, basically paving a smoother, wider road for it to come back again. The result? That thought is now way more likely to return, probably even stronger next time.
And diving even deeper, the source claims this has real neurological consequences. Every time you focus on a thought, you're firing up brain centers tied to emotion and memory, like the amygdala and hippocampus. You're basically telling your brain, hey, this random thought is important. You're also strengthening what scientists call the default mode network, which is basically the part of your brain that just wanders off and daydreams. In short, you're training your brain to get better at worrying, making it way easier to get lost in thought and much, much harder to connect with your true self.
So the ultimate takeaway from this whole perspective is that by doing this kind of meditation, you're not freeing yourself. You are, in fact, building your own prison, cell by cell. You're getting trapped in what the source calls a matrix of thoughts, a fake reality built from all that mental noise, and you're mistaking it for who you really are. Okay, so how do we get out of this so-called trap? Well, the source argues that the solution lies in understanding a really critical difference, the difference between what it calls mindfulness and what it calls true self-awareness. And this chart here just lays out the whole contrast perfectly. On the left, you have its definition of mindfulness, focusing on thoughts, which it sees as part of the outer world, or the matrix. But on the right, you have self-awareness, focusing only on your inner world, your essential self. That, it claims, is the real path to finding what's true. And this brings us to the actual solution, the alternative practice. So if watching your thoughts is the problem that's building the prison, what's the key that unlocks the door? The source describes it as a direct path back home, to your true nature. The solution it proposes is, at least in concept, incredibly simple. Instead of putting your attention on your breath or your body or the thoughts just passing by, you direct 100% of your attention inward, to that conscious presence that is you. It's a total, fundamental shift in the anchor of your meditation. And you see, this isn't just a technique, it's a whole philosophical shift. The entire practice is built on this one principle. Thoughts, feelings, sensations, they're all seen as just reflections of the outside world, of the matrix. The unchanging truth, the actual source of your awareness, can only be found within. The source uses this beautiful analogy that you find in mystical poetry from people like Rumi. It compares your awareness to a mirror. According to this idea, watching your thoughts is like getting obsessed with the reflections in the mirror. The solution it offers is to turn your attention away from all those reflections and look at the mirror itself, the source of awareness, which it says is you.
This whole idea is captured perfectly in this classic Persian story of the Simorgh. A huge flock of birds goes on this epic, dangerous journey to find their divine king. After tons of trials, only 30 birds are left. And get this, in Persian, Simorgh literally means 30 birds. They finally reach the king's home, but all they find is a lake. And when they look into the water, they see their own reflection, and they realize that they, together, were the king they were looking for all along. It's a perfect metaphor for the source's main point. The truth you're seeking outside is actually inside you.
So, ultimately, this practice is presented as an active form of reprogramming. While watching your thoughts supposedly reinforces all those negative loops, turning your attention inward does the exact opposite. Every single moment you spend centered in yourself is said to break that old hypnotic programming and write a new code for freedom. You're calming the mind by cutting off the fuel supply to the matrix of thoughts.
So after exploring this pretty radical critique and its proposed solution, this whole explainer really boils down to one simple, very personal question.
The source material leaves us with this question to really reflect on. If you've been practicing mindfulness for years, watching your thoughts, but you still feel stuck, could it be that you've been looking in the wrong direction this whole time? It's a challenging idea, for sure, something to think about.